Hey, everybody, it's Thanksgiving week. Lots to be thankful for. We just had a very successful international window, a good weekend for the boys in Europe. Vince is back, and we've got Leander Shaerlaekens gracing us today. He is, as you all know, a longtime soccer reporter, writes for now for The Guardian, among others, and he's got a book about the history of the USMNT, The Long Game, coming out soon. You can pre-order the book, and we'll put that link in the show notes. We'll talk about some of that shortly. But first, Leander, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm really well, guys. Thanks for having me. I love this podcast.
Vince, thank you. And Vince, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm back 2 weeks off. I got to work about 4 weeks a year. You know what I'm saying? And this past 2 weeks were 2 of those 4 weeks, hard days. I'm working 7 days a week at that time because I'm a perpetual procrastinator, ever since but this time I'm doing it, back in my college days, you pop out. Don't do this. Okay.
Yeah.
But I used to acquire an Adderall, take that, stay up all night, cram for a test or do my 20-page paper or whatever, get that done. Night of 50 tabs open in the browser. You know how it goes. But now I'm doing a sans Adderall. I'm a responsible adult now. I want to make sure I belabor this point. Do not do what I did. Okay. Do not buy stimulants on the black market. I think the statute of limitations have passed. So I'm good. But yeah, I'm good, man. I was able to watch the games, not necessarily put my critical eye on it, but I was able to watch.
Maybe you had more fun watching that way than the rest of us with our critical eye,
Sure. Yeah.
I was going to say, I thought I had it good. My day job at Marist University, I'm a college lecturer. I work 30 weeks a year, which I thought was a pretty sweet deal, but I cannot compete with 4.
Yeah.
You love the students who wait until the night before to do all the work, don't you?
The night before are the diligent ones. I just had a class this morning, and I asked, so show of hands, when did you guys do this reading? And almost all of them said they'd done it like while they were having breakfast, like 20 minutes before class. So night before, I would happily take.
Doing the reading that's no small thing, I mean,
yeah. I wouldn't have been raising my hand, brother. I'm cramming all that reading in for whatever test final. Hopefully you put the lectures up. But they still use Blackboard. What they use nowadays?
There's a bunch of different ones. We use Brightspace right now. Okay. One's called iLearn. I don't put lectures up because then why would anybody come to class?
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get your tuition's worth. Come to class. That's what the money is for.
Right. And the classroom discussion ideally is a big part of the learning experience too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it sure is in my class. I ain't lecturing for an hour and 15 minutes.
Most of my classes are pretty practical. They're writing classes, they're journalism classes, so there's not really exams, but you got to come and talk about the readings, and then you got to do some writing.
Yeah.
That's all tough to do if you're not showing up.
Fair. Let's we should do another podcast on higher education for sure, but let's talk about the wins over Paraguay and Uruguay. Leander, what do you take away from this past window?
Macro optimism, positivity. I think there was a lot of good. There's a few things that still concern me. There seems to be an absolute logjam of talent in the midfield now, as every time that Poch rotates his players, and we're not allowed to say regulars anymore, but whenever he tries in a few guys, it seems that in the midfield the drop off is negligible. So there's a few different positions that now seem to be 3-4 players deep, where they're going to have some genuinely difficult decisions to make for that final World Cup roster. At the same time, there's also positions where I think they're still desperately thin. Up front, there seem to be 3 viable options between Flo Balogun and Haji Wright and Ricardo Pepi. But they all are streaky. They've all been prone to long-term injuries. It seems like that's still a position where things are a little bit fickle. Center back, I'm still concerned about, especially if you're going to play with 3 of them and you realistically need 5 or 6 on your roster. They still seem to be a bit thin there. The wing back positions, whatever we're calling them, if I would really like to see Serginho Dest play on the left a little bit more for the national team, because I think it's entirely plausible that Jedi Robinson isn't fit or isn't fully back to himself in time for the World Cup, because this injury has just dragged on and on and on. And are you going to really start Max Arfsten against Germany or, whoever you might be playing at the World Cup? I'm not so sure. So I think it's really plausible that Dest would play on the left and that Tim Weah plays on the right in sort of a wing-backy system. And I'd like to see them actually try that and give us a look at what that looks like. Checking on my notes here, every time I rewatch the Paraguay game, and I think I've seen it 3 times now, Gio Reyna looks better with every rewatch. At the same time, Ricardo Pepi's miss on that doorstep looks worse with every rewatch. But I thought Gio was he broke lines on the ball. He got the goal and the quasi assist, obviously. But at the same time, each time I noticed this a little bit more, he tracked back a lot, right? He won the ball a lot. He was doing real work on both sides of the ball. And I kind of came away thinking, if he can't run as hard as he used to, if he's not as fast as he once was, if he's not able to sprint really full out, if he plays like this, I think I'm okay with that. Not every player has to be the fastest guy on the field. There's players around him who I think can make up for that physicality. And the other note I had for the Paraguay game is that they really did just give up pretty much one major scoring chance, and that's what they conceded on. Against Uruguay, on the other hand, which obviously was the much bigger win, they gave away a good amount. That game could have been 5-3, 5-4 if a few things had broken differently. They weren't nearly as tidy in the back, which kind of fits into my earlier point about still being a bit concerned about that back line and how you're going to staff that if you're going to play 3 center backs at the World Cup.
I'm so glad you said that about Gio, because I love talking about Gio Reyna, and I had exactly the same experience the third time I watched it. Second time I watched the game, I was like, ooh, Gio's even better than I thought. Third time I watched, I was like, just like you, he was really, really good. And I think it's the tracking back is part of it, but it's also like he can make a pass in our half that eliminates a couple of defenders from a difficult situation that other players on our team, most other players on our team can't. I actually think Weston McKennie is like maybe the only guy in that sort of conversation for like translating a difficult sort of nothing situation, as Greg Velasquez would say, into attack. And man, those things add up a lot, because you get pinned in your half, you can't get out. Then you just kick it long and you lose possession. But with Gio, he can receive it under pressure. He finds a solution, and we're off to the races. You get like 6 or 7 of those in a game from one player. That player is really, really valuable. And I think that's the big thing he did. Obviously, he scored with his head. He got a little bit of a deflection on that pass that was a quasi assist, as you put it. But it's that work in the middle third that I think really sets him apart. Anyway, just agree to agree there.
That headed goal was kind of funny, because afterwards he said something, I think it was to the TNT broadcast, where he goes, I'm pretty tall. So the last few weeks I've been practicing headers. And like, hang on, you're what now, 23? It has only now occurred to you to practice headers because you're tall, and then right away you score your first header as a professional. I'm sure it's not that simple, and I'm kind of maybe erasing some of the work he's done, but I was like, well, yes, this is a thing you can do when you're tall. We're very glad that you've discovered this.
It was his first headed goal. I think either for club or country.
I think both.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what are we gonna do about the center backs? I don't know, man. That was gonna be one of my other questions for you. Are the center backs gonna be good enough in the World Cup? And I don't know.
It helps
man.
when there's an extra guy back there, but at the same time, they become a little bit. It's easier for gaps to form between those guys if your backs are pushed up. It you got to get that one right. I mean that's one of those where Pochettino and his staff are going to have to earn their money in really figuring out how to lock that down, because World Cups, the margins are going to be so very fine.
Yeah.
And just in general, I mean, we're committing a lot of numbers to the attack anyway. I mean, like it's usually nothing to see like both players in like that double pivot or what. I mean, how many times you see like Tanner Tessman in the box,
Yeah.
for instance, against Paraguay, Christian Roldan getting up there. We saw his attacking exploits last window. And it's all because he's kind of taking the reins off, whereas Greg never did. We were sitting there begging, like, yo, why is Weston McKennie not involved in the attack whatsoever? Totally different to in the Poch reign. So it's these defenders on islands even more and less protected.
Yeah.
Way more than the past, and it's just it's we're flirting with disaster, but I think I like it this way.
It's funny, actually. I don't know if you noticed, but against Fiorentina, McKennie was playing in a very similar role than he had against Australia for the US, playing right underneath blanking on his name, Vlahovic. Yeah, next to Kenan Yildiz. He was playing much further up the field and much more centrally than he usually does for Juve. So I sort of wondered if his coach there, if Spalletti, kind of liked what Poch had done with McKennie against Australia and played him in that really high role, which is not really a place that I sort of expected him a few months ago. And he was effective there for Juve as well.
Yeah. He's playing really well. I mean, I guess let's skip around a little bit and talk a little bit about the weekend action, because it's relevant to what we're discussing now. That he was, he started in that position. You said it. He ended up playing right wing back towards the end of the game, which often happens for him. But what really struck me about his performance in a game that Juve fans are probably frustrated about, they dropped points again in Florence. They're like, 7 points back of Inter at the top of the table. So things aren't going super great for Juve as a team. But Wes is the way he was moving without the ball, the way he was moving into pockets, the way he was making runs to clear out space for his teammates. Like, he just looks he looks as fresh and as, trim, honestly, as he has looked for years. He looks totally fit. And it's really good to see that.
He's been cooking. He almost was the hero.
Yeah.
In this match. Found a little bit of space, got a header in the box, probably about right outside the 6-yard box, I want to say. Unfortunately, the Fiorentina keeper got a hand to it, tipped it over the bar. But that was like 82nd minute, 83rd minute, something like that.
Yeah, it was late.
Could have broken the deadlock, but yeah, he's been cooking, man. I mean, we talked about it. Maybe the last podcast I was on, I don't know, but
yeah,
he continues to put them together for Juve.
He does.
I think it's really encouraging that I think Spalletti is the first Juve manager since Andrea Pirlo, when McKennie came into the club. If I'm not mistaken, Spalletti is his 5th full-time Juve manager, but he's the first one since Pirlo who has kind of right off the bat, right at the outset, sort of seen something in Weston that he thinks is useful and is a contributor, right? With every coach in between, he's basically started out in the doghouse and had to like work his way back inside. So it's just kind of refreshing to finally see a Juve manager who's like, I can use this guy. I can work with him. He can do a few different things, and who's trusted him right from the outset, because I think he's played all but like 5 minutes of Spalletti's reign so far.
Yep.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that extreme. Yeah. He's so good he's like, to go back to the Gio thing, he's so good in those tight spaces too. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. How comfortable he is in traffic, finding somebody's feet. He has a few giveaways every game. I think he only had one in this game, but so he's been pretty clean. But Let's talk a little quickly about Milan because big game at the San Siro. Milan wins 1-0. Pulisic scores the game winner. And it's just a moment of sound fundamentals. It's a 3-on-3 attack, I think. Salamakers tries from distance, and the goalkeeper pushes it over in Pulisic's direction. He's crashing the back post, tucks it home. But that was the difference in the derby. He also went close to the near post with a good hit from 25 yards toward the end of the first half, which was nice. But Inter dominated this game. Mike Mignon stood on his head. We got a great video. I know you're gonna appreciate this, Vince. We got a great video from AC Milan at the end of the game of Maxi Allegri. As soon as the final whistle blows, it was like slow motion. Just grins like a Cheshire cat and trots just heads right down the tunnel. Doesn't stop to say hi to anybody. Just like grinning to himself, heads for the tunnel. And I guess this is fairly customary for him, but it's pretty funny. What an interesting fellow. He's not shaking anybody's hands. He's not celebrating, just celebrating to himself, going down the tunnel. Thought that was great.
I love him.
I really do too. I like one of the great characters in the game.
That counter-attacking style seems to really suit Pulisic nicely, I always think that he looks at his best for Milan when he's not being counted on to kind of make things happen, and when he's a guy who's cleaning up on the save, and sort of sticking in the rebound, or when he's getting to sort of drop behind that back line and make long runs and use his speed and all the rest, and it just kind of again reaffirms that old adage that we've been talking about how many of these U.S. players are playing for big clubs, but maybe aren't necessarily the central guy, and how that suits them better, right? Which again is, I think, an argument for trying to fit someone like Reina in the lineup if he's fit and if he's playing regularly, because that does free up Pulisic to do more of the running off the ball stuff, and where he really seems to shine.
Yeah. You could see Wes and Gio really being able to put something together in the build-up, and then find Christian, find Tim Weah, running in behind.
Mm-hmm. So, at the very beginning of Leander's answer, when you asked him what did we take away from this past window, you said something about Poch and rotation or something. Or the fact that we can't deem the regulars as regulars or whatever. And the one thing that did catch my eye over this past window was his response to the press, where he kind of got on the press a little bit about the rotation that happened when reporter, I forgot who asked the question. Reporter,
it was first Doug McIntyre asked about it, and then Paul Tenorio asked about it in a slightly different way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Rotation was mentioned. The team was rotated, and somehow Poch. I just feel like these questions were framed like Poch has been laying the groundwork. Like, hey, we need to treat these players like this. There are no regular players, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like both people framed the question by taking Poch's decrees at heed. And
right.
They tried to tiptoe around as much as possible. They didn't even say regular players. They just said, "Hey, you guys had some rotation from the Paraguay match to the Uruguay match, and you were still able to put out a good performance." And all of a sudden, my man Poch gonna blow up on him.
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
It's just the crankiest he has been in 14 months in charge, and it comes after battering Uruguay 5-1, which is just like now. This is when you're doing this, okay?
Yeah,
I am the U.S. coach. As he
yeah.
So
the point he makes is that
not the janitor,
and which is maybe sort of philosophically easier to argue when you're in the Argentinian program, as he was as a player, which is that whoever's wearing the jersey is the national team, right?
Mhm.
And of course, especially with a team like the US that has an A team and a B team and a C team, as we call it, right? There's just so much turnover in the pool. He's called up 71 different players, I think, in his first year. So you are going to get those questions, and you have a program where our third string right back isn't playing for Lazio or whoever, right? There is a drop off just in the pedigree of the clubs these players play for. And so it is natural, in defense of my colleagues, to sort of assume that, some of these guys are just on a different plane than their rivals for that position, right? But so I think that because he's been preaching culture, borrowing cliches from various CEOs, and because it's all about the team supersedes the players and all the rest, that I think he just really recoiled against this idea that there is a ranking and that there is a hierarchy, when he spent the last year plus sort of smashing up that hierarchy and starting over.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which I understand that, but it's like the hierarchy wasn't even mentioned. It was just like you rotated the squad. There were 7 changes. I don't even know what the exact number of changes were between the two games. Like we can't even mention that. You know what I'm saying? It just put me off a little bit. Put me off a little bit. And nine changes.
9, yeah.
Okay, from game to game, and it's like I don't know. It just kind of. I watched the video. I was just like, huh, because you know what? After getting to know the press a little bit, and Leander, I ran into you in New York. Just happened to sit next to you. Because the press room was very crowded after South Korea.
Yeah.
But after spending time with the people, getting to know them, and Doug McIntyre is just if you've even been on Twitter, you see he takes shot after shot for coming out so strongly about Gio Reyna. I don't know, but
yeah,
my point is,
poor guy. I mean, what a mess Twitter is. But anyway,
my point is, after spending all this time around these people, the press corps of the U.S. men's national team, first of all, extremely nice people. Number one. Number two, they some people that just care about the jobs, and they really care about soccer. This isn't just a beat to most of them. They really care about the game and its growth here in the United States. And when you're around with them, they just want to talk ball the whole time. I mean, they're just bouncing ideas off each other, back and forth, etc. And I don't know. I just didn't like it from Poch. I didn't like it from Poch, and I understand that. Whatever. I see people saying, "Oh yeah, he's setting the standard. He's coming after our what do they call them?
MLS shills.
Shills, right? Yeah, he's coming after.
It's totally an incoherent thing to have for anybody to have said.
He's roasting these shills, etc. And maybe there will be a point in time where he should roast the shills or whatever. I'm just using their terminology here. I just didn't think that was the time. I didn't think that was the time.
Sorry, what's in? I mean, Paul and Doug are total pros and terrific journalists, but just on the merits of what they were saying, Tyler Adams wasn't there, Chris Richards wasn't there, McKennie wasn't there, Pulisic wasn't there. Like, this was a diluted roster, and then you make 9 changes. It's a perfectly valid question.
Yeah.
Right? No matter what you want to say about culture and hierarchy and all the rest, like, most of the regulars weren't there. Of the guys who were on the field starting against Uruguay, really only Dest and Freeze are like plausible World Cup starters, right? So, you can throw a tantrum.
Poch would disagree, Leander. Poch would disagree.
Yeah. You can have a hissy fit, but I don't know how you can reasonably say that those were bad questions to ask.
No, they weren't bad questions. I totally agree with that. But I guess my thinking is, so he looked like he was about to cry at one point. And when he was, remember when he was like shaking his head and he goes, very sad, like he looked like he was he was sad, like watching, an unprovoked country declare war on another country. It was like a really sad moment. But I feel like it's all just theater, is he really mad at these guys? Maybe in the moment he was, I don't know, but it feels to me like he's so allergic to this idea of there being anything owed to any single player, and this has been his like basically his main battle since March of 2025, erasing this sense that after this win, for that to be even like slightly hinted at just sets him off, because he's like, no, we're not talking that way. Even though I do think, end of the day, the World Cup roster is going to be basically who was there in March 2025.
But after a long time of me thinking that this endeavor that he was trying to fight towards was pointless, here he is now getting results with whoever, against teams like Paraguay and Uruguay. You know what I'm saying? So he has achieved what he set out to achieve.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I thought it was not going to happen. It looked like it was not going to happen, but we're here now. And to get to, I came down on Poch a little bit right there, but take a step back. We're cooking, baby. We're back. We're back. Now where are we back to? I think low-key, he took the scenic route to get us back to, I think we're, as a team, as a whole, I think we're about back to where we were around the World Cup. We still got to find some type of cutting edge. Maybe that comes through Gio Reyna. It probably will come through Gio Reyna if it does come. We still got to find a way to create, 2 or 3 great chances a match consistently. But, I'm extremely happy with what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And next window, March, two games in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? Belz, make sure you got the guest room ready for me.
Yep. It's ready, baby.
I can't wait. And I think we're I can just feel it. I can feel the excitement that's growing. Patreon signups and whatnot. Like we're turning the corner a little bit. And now we got 4 months to just sit and bask in this glow of the fact that we beat Uruguay 5-1 and beat Paraguay. And so there's go ahead.
That's the thing, right? They're looking really good, but the entire puzzle still hasn't been laid yet, right? Even back at the Nations League and the catastrophic finals, right, which sort of prompted the whole reset.
Yep.
Poch didn't have Dest, he didn't have Pepe, and he didn't have Balogun. He still hasn't had a window where we can't say regulars, but where he has had all of the players that we think are his best players available all at once, right? And so we keep seeing fragments of what this total picture might look like. Like it still hasn't been fully assembled. I think that's what the March camp is for. And you just have to hope that between that and the 2 friendlies leading up to the World Cup, that's enough time. But it's like we keep seeing pieces of the puzzles and like little corners of it being assembled without the entire thing being laid. So in that sense, it's still really hard to tell where they are as one collective.
But it has to make you happy to see him grab Tim Tillman, just off the heap. I need a midfielder. Hold on, let me just Tim get in here. And then, Tim crunches somebody to lead up to the Alex Freeman goal. And generally plays well. I'm biased. I'm a Tim Tillman fanatic. But it's just the fact that we can just chop and change, bring in whoever, when for whatever reason, that was not the case in the Gold Cup.
It wasn't the case under Berhalter either.
Right.
It was like either we had everybody, either we had all the regulars or we were hot steaming ass, like
it's like terrible.
Berhalter actually talked about this from my book when we talked about Copa America. He said that he should have rotated his players more and that he came to be too reliant on his regulars and didn't sort of freshen it up and mix it up enough.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, it checks out. I think we should, speaking of your book, I think we should get into it, but let's take a little break and then we'll talk about that. The book is called The Long Game, U.S. Men's Soccer and Its Savage 4-Decade Journey to the Top or Thereabouts. Some fascinating stuff to discuss from the early history of soccer in America in there, among other things, and we're going to get into it. If you want to skip the ads and help Scuff turn the corner, help ensure its viability as a source of accountability and celebration of the U.S. men's national team, join the Patreon. I ask you to seriously consider this. $5 a month is what we ask. And at that level, you get clip notes, videos of a lot of the footage we discuss on the show, both after games and on Mondays. We will be back shortly. Okay, we're back. All right, Leander. So first of all, the structure of this book, just so people know, is it's like a chapter on the history of soccer / the U.S. men's team in America, and then a chapter. I don't know if you call it a chapter, but like a vignette on a current player. And so I had a 2-part question. First, why did you structure it that way? Just as a matter of craft. And then 2, which of those 6 players, and I think it was, let me see, it's Tyler Adams, Matt Turner, Ricardo Pepi, Christian Pulisic, Jedi, and Weston McKennie. So 6. Which of those gave you the most material that hit the cutting room floor?
Oh, interesting. Well, in terms of the structure, there's really 2 stories I wanted to tell, right? One was the history of this national team kind of up to this point, and the other was how this team came together ahead of the World Cup, right? And I thought the best way to tell that was to profile players who are all really interesting in their own right, but who also say something about the larger kind of American soccer landscape, right? Tyler Adams and the lack of pipelines into high quality youth academies, having to commute, an hour and a half every day each way just to get himself to the Red Bull Academy. And consequently now starting a minor league team, the Hudson Valley Hammers, to help kind of develop more pipelines and to create one in his backyard so that now talent coming up doesn't have to go through the ordeal that he and his family had to, which is what, freezes a lot of people out of the pipeline. Ricardo Pepi has a fabulous backstory as sort of I won't say a long shot prospect in El Paso in the terms of talent, because he was obviously very talented. He scored just a ton of goals his whole life. But at the same time, just being from sort of that corner of the country, even though it's suffused in soccer, it wasn't so evident that he would get seen by an academy like FC Dallas and would eventually become a sort of resident there and make his way into the pros. And that speaks to a bigger story of, again, pipelines, but also of how we include communities like the Hispanic American community that, have been frozen out of the youth system a lot. Matt Turner is really about a story, an incredible underdog story, but also somebody who maybe should have been ID'd a lot sooner, right? And what does it say about the way that we kind of advertise soccer, I guess, to kids? That somebody who clearly had the talent to become a World Cup goalkeeper and who had these other worldly reflexes didn't even really focus on soccer until he was 16. And wasn't a prospect even in college, and had to sort of scrap his way into professional soccer through the back door. Like, what does that say about us and the way that we identify and develop soccer players? So I kind of wanted to tell stories that weren't just good stories in and of themselves, but that also really just spoke to the sport writ large in our country. And what got left on the cutting room floor. I will say that Tyler Adams, who lives 10 minutes from my house here in the Hudson Valley, took me the longest to nail down and to actually have my interview with. He has a lovely family, and they're very helpful. But he's someone who's in high demand and who prioritizes his time according to whatever's going to help him the most on the field, which I totally respect. But it was sort of funny that the guy who ostensibly I should have been able to bike to his house was the longest journey towards actually nailing down that interview and getting him.
I don't want to give too much of your book away, but I love the anecdote about the garden games and how mad he got playing garden games with his, I don't know if it was croquet or what it was, but playing games in the garden with his family, that everybody had to be like, Tyler, chill out, bro. Like, let's get you out of here. Cause he can't turn off the high intensity competitive instinct, which I understand. That's how it works. But that was a telling anecdote.
it's the elite athlete superpower, right? And it's something that's underappreciated. And it's also something that when they're not on the field and or when they retire, a lot of athletes have a really hard time kind of managing that competitiveness, right? Because they spend all their careers weaponizing it and harnessing it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, sport is over and it's like, what do you do with it?
Gamble.
Yeah. What do you do?
Gamble.
Right. There's all manner of vices available to you to try to channel this competitiveness unproductively.
So my specific question though, Leander, was which of those profiles was the hardest to boil down? I didn't want to ask you which was the hardest to stretch into a full length profile, but I do want to ask which of those gave you so much material you had to like, man, this is hard. I got a lot. It's going to hit the cutting room floor.
In a weird way, it was Christian Pulisic, who, you know, I've spoken to in mixed zones and press conferences, all the rest, is one of the few players I didn't have a sit-down interview with because he had a contractual thing with his own book deal, or there was some kind of conflict, according to his agent. And so what I really wrote about, because I think Pulisic is more interesting in sort of the fact of American men's soccer yearning for a superstar for decades and decades. And then one comes along and he has no interest in that stardom whatsoever. And he sort of tries in every possible way to be anonymous away from the field. And I think that's part of why he did the docuseries on Paramount Plus, is to kind of, you know, answer that demand in a sense and be like, okay, you know what, I'll let you in. Here's me. And now can we please be done with it? And can you leave me alone? Right. I get that energy from his docuseries. But so what I wrote about, as much as I did about him, was about the search for an American star. Right. And it goes back to Kyle Rote Jr. in the 70s, who's the son of a famous quarterback, leads through Freddie Adu, who I spoke to at length, even though he doesn't give interviews very much anymore, who was fascinating. And Landon Donovan and his kind of disinterest in being the kind of careerist that you sort of have to be to get everything out of your talent, because Landon wasn't wired that way. And he just wanted to live in California and be in California. And if that meant playing in MLS, then he was going to play in MLS. Right. And then Clint Dempsey, who had the talent and who had the drive, but who was, by his own admission, a little rough around the edges, and who kind of didn't want to polish himself in the ways that would make him sort of that, you know, late night TV talk show guest. And so that interview, I had a ton of material just talking to all those people who had been anointed as that first star. Sports Illustrated at one point called Tony Meola the first great international superstar that was going to come from the United States. So I had a lot of fun with that one, sort of in the absence of the character himself being as compelling, shall we say.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So going back to the beginning of things, I was fascinated with the sections on the American Soccer League, which I think a lot of people will not have ever heard of or know anything about. But it started in 1921. Can you give us just a sense of what was the context for this league being founded, and give us a sense of the rise and fall of it and why it fell? Because I guess what's most surprising to me is that it was actually pretty popular, you know? Yeah. So go ahead.
So the ASL has existed in several incarnations. I mean, what's always funny and what drives like the hardcore American soccer historians nuts is when you ask about when will soccer arrive in America, right? It already did 100 years ago, right? It already had a golden age. It's, you know, obviously trying to have another one. But the ASL, if memory serves, it was a while since I wrote it, but was only the second sort of organized national league. And at one time, because in the UK, they had all these rules about it. They basically had like a hard salary cap that was super, super low. Like there were all these rules about how their players could only make, it was like £6 a week, and then it was £8 a week, but it would be like cut during the off season. Meanwhile, in the ASL, you had sort of these well-heeled owners who would pay players a couple $1,000s a year, right? And so for a time before the Great Depression, the ASL was the world's best paying league, and they were poaching all of these players from the UK, from these big clubs, from the Scottish League, which was one of the best in the world at the time, from Manchester United, because they would just pay way more money. And so there's an argument to be made that in the 20s, early 30s, some of the best league soccer in the world was played in the United States in the ASL. All these guys were just coming over, and that was obviously a benefit to the US when they entered into the first World Cup in 1930, because all of their players had been playing with these guys, right? And they were playing in a well-funded domestic league with like international elite talent, and that really helped them. And there was an argument, there was sort of a accusation at the time that the US only did well in 1930 at the first World Cup, where they came third because they naturalized all these guys, but that's not true. Right. All of the players on that 1930 team, except for one, only became pros in the US. Some of them had moved over and had migrated from the UK, but they hadn't been pros except for one player at the time. They really developed and came up after they got to the US. Unfortunately, what you saw with that league, which has been the recurring pattern of just professional men's soccer ever since, is that it was chaotic, and that there was infighting, and that there were sort of self-interested administrators, and that they would get into these competitions with rival leagues, and that sort of made everybody worse and weaker. And then the Great Depression really came along and killed off the ASL, and sort of that first heyday of American men's soccer was over then.
Yeah, it's just such a sad thing, and that it took like 45 years to recover from that, basically, right? But we're talking like, I forget what the number, 46,000 people came to one of the ASL games. I mean, there were like the attendance was really strong.
Yeah,
there were teams basically all over the eastern half of the United States. I had no idea about any of this, so it's pretty cool.
Some teams drew tens of thousands, some drew a couple hundred. I mean, there's so many of these weird, quirky little stories in American club soccer history. There was, at the turn of the century, there were two efforts by baseball owners it wasn't called Major League Baseball yet, but by owners of baseball teams who basically said, hey, we should have our teams play soccer as well, so that we have some programming for our stadiums over the winter, right? And so twice these baseball owners tried to start a soccer league, which they then, because they were cheap, they would have their baseball manager also coach the soccer team, right? And sometimes players would play two sports, but it never took off. Some of these teams only drew a couple hundred fans. Some of these teams basically folded as soon as spring training started, because the organization wanted to focus on the real business. And there are just so many of these quirky, weird little things in our American soccer history that we really don't appreciate. So I tried to really highlight those in the book.
Yeah. I mean, I learned a lot just from like the first 3 chapters. I haven't gotten all the way through the book, but I read the first, quarter of it. Joe Gaetjens. I didn't realize this. Joe Gaetjens, the guy who scored the goal in 1950, right, to beat England, he was actually Haitian, like born and raised in Haiti, and maybe I'll let you tell it. How did he die?
So Gaetjens played for Haiti before and after he played for the U.S. at the 1950 World Cup. He scores that famous goal that fells England. He gets carried away. And so after that World Cup, he goes to play in France a little bit. He's injured a lot. He's a little bit unfocused, away from the field, shall we say. So eventually he makes his way back to Haiti. He'd come from this well-off family. They had like a big estate in Port-au-Prince. There was in the movie, I think it's called Game of Our Lives or whatever it's called, that they made about that 1950 team. They made it seem like he was this voodoo practicing sort of street kid who had somehow sort of made it good. That's not true. He was a Catholic from a prominent family that was politically well connected. And so what happened is Papa Doc Duvalier, the Haitian dictator, in one of his purges, he was coming after the Gaetjens family because they were aligned with a rival political faction. And so Joe Gaetjens didn't think he had anything to fear because he wasn't politically involved, and he thought of himself as a soccer player, and he had like a few small businesses after he retired. I think he ran a dry cleaners, if memory serves. And so he didn't think he had anything to worry about because he was famous from soccer, and surely Duvalier wouldn't come after him. But all of his family members who were politically involved had fled the country. I think most of them went over to the Dominican side of the island. And so what does Duvalier's Secret Service do, or his sort of secret police, is they arrest Joe Gaetjens instead, presumably as a kind of message to the rest of the family. He disappears into this notorious prison in Port-au-Prince, and he's never seen again, where he was almost certainly executed pretty shortly after he got there. We'll probably never know exactly. One of the great ironies is that he was eligible for playing for the U.S. at that 1950 World Cup, along with a few other guys. Joe Maka had played for the Belgian national team, I believe, because at the time, FIFA let every federation set its own standards for who is eligible to play for their national team. And at the time, U.S. Soccer, which wasn't called U.S. Soccer yet, had basically made it the rule that if you had signed your first papers, which was like this document that you would sign to signal your intention to become a naturalized American citizen, that was good enough. So Gaetjens signs his first papers, and that gets him onto the national team, but he never actually follows through and becomes a U.S. citizen, which is what makes one of the many things that makes this story so sad, is that if he had become a U.S. citizen, it's doubtful that Papa Doc would have executed him, because that would have meant killing an American citizen. And that would have obviously politically been a lot more charged and fraught, and would have invited scrutiny from the U.S. government in a way that this didn't. So he may have saved his life if he'd actually gotten his U.S. passport, but he never did.
Chilling stuff, really. Okay, so that's Gaetjens being disappeared by Papa Doc, which I didn't know till I read your book. Alkes Panagoulias. He's Alkes Panagoulias.
Yeah.
He's the coach of something called Team America in the 1980s. Can you tell us what Team America was? And then I got a more specific question about Panagoulias, but we'll get to that in a moment.
So after the ASL collapses, American club soccer becomes just highly regionalized. Like basically every city, every region is doing its own thing. Cleveland at one point had a 2-tier professional league just within the city, which had promotion and relegation, although we don't have to get into that. And so sport becomes highly, highly regional. And the national team is in the wilderness at this point, right? They had an 11-year streak where they didn't win a game at all. By the late 70s, early 80s, they are playing one game a year, if that, right? Because the federation is broke. The whole thing is a mess. There's no organization. At national team camps in the 80s, guys weren't getting paid aside from a $5 a day per diem. And some camps, the players were actually asked to forego their per diem so that they could afford an extra day of practice, right? They would sometimes.
This was at the same time that the NASL, or at least in the recent past, the NASL had a great deal of success, like Pele and Beckenbauer in the 70s.
This did not benefit the national team directly for the longest time. And so, players would show up to a national team camp and nobody had thought to bring balls. And somebody would have to run the Kmart and buy a bunch of balls. I mean, this sort of thing happened routinely. It was amateur hour. And so what does the federation do? They decide that maybe their best shot at rejuvenating the national team is to enter it into the NASL as a club team. And the NASL's on its last legs at this point. They're desperate. They think that Americanizing the league will, and making it less sort of so foreigner driven, will make it more appealing, and maybe that saves the league. So in 1983, U.S. Soccer enters the national team, or what was supposed to be the national team, into the NASL as Team America, except most of the star players on that team, like Ricky Davis, refuse to take part, and they stay with their club teams because they think they have a better deal there. And Team America comes dead last and folds after one season. The NASL folds the following year. So the whole thing is just a huge calamity. But this is kind of where I start in the book, the modern history of the national team, because at least it was some ambition, right? At least they were trying to get this thing going again and to, in some way, make the national team better, which they hadn't bothered to do in decades.
Right. Panagoulias said in the 80s that he believed there were Pelés growing up all over America. Now, obviously, he was wrong about this, even if he did believe it. But why doing all this research into all these like high level leagues and these big schemes that didn't work out? Did it ever occur to you like everybody's sort of barking up the wrong tree here? It's like you're not going to create a good national team by like managing the players that already exist in a way that is most optimal. It really does have to start like way lower down the food chain,
There are a lot of these patterns that just repeat themselves again and again through men's soccer history in the US, where writing the book, but then reading back through it, sometimes you just think like, what are you doing? Like it's not this complicated. Ricky Davis actually wrote this letter to the editor that the New York Times printed about why he wasn't going to join Team America, and he said, this doesn't solve anything for us. If we're going to draw all of the national team into this one team, only 11 guys can be on the field. So it'll actually wind up meaning less playing time for the national team players than if you just leave them with their various NASL clubs. And he said, why not just spend that money instead of entering a franchise? Why not just give us a big, long postseason tour after the NASL season so that we can have a few months together, we can play some games, and that way we'll get the benefit of spending time together, and we'll be able to play for our NASL teams where we have really good teammates who are helping us develop because we're practicing with Carlos Alberto or George Best every day. So he made some really salient points, and he was completely ignored. And they did the Team America thing anyway, and it was a catastrophe. But yeah, it's a history of missed opportunities.
Panagoulias is a fascinating guy with the comb over and smoking cigarettes all the time, even on the sideline. So I recommend the book. Vince, you got any questions for Leander? Or he's got to go here shortly. Well, Leander, go ahead.
I got one thing and then one question. I'm gonna get more information on this, but I was talking to my neighbor who has kids. Like my kids and their kids have become friends. Whatever. He's a big Barca fan. He says his father used to play goalkeeper for the Cosmos back in the day. I think backup keeper, something like that.
Okay.
I'm gonna get more information on this. Just letting the people know there's I'm gonna keep digging. But also, Leander, I guess I just wonder, like, all this understanding of soccer history in America, what do you make of the moment we're in now? And I mean, obviously, the question that Belz just asked, as far as just trying to wish world-class players into existence without addressing the root cause of the issue. But like from a whole holistic point of view, like the clubs, MLS, the national team program, everything, you think we're in the right place?
When you take the macro view of this, as I did, when you step back and you're like, okay, I'm going to write about the last 40 years in American men's soccer and write about that recent history, because I start the story pretty much with Team America. There's a chapter that you got into, Belz, about sort of the prehistory, but really the modern era starts with Team America. If you consider the fact that 2 generations ago, there was a World Cup qualifier, which was long after the US had any chance of even making the World Cup, where they actually pulled a player from the stands, the United States men's national team, because they did not have enough players. There were World Cup qualifying campaigns where they didn't have a coach. There were some where they had 2 coaches and nobody was sure who actually was the head coach, right? This program has been so chaotic, or was so chaotic for so long. They had these epic droughts where they weren't scoring goals, where they were losing every game to Mexico 7-1 or whatever it was. If you consider the place where they came from, having guys who were essentially amateurs making $5 a day, to where we are now, where we're arguing over, these 6 guys could potentially be playing underneath the striker and they can all do a job at the World Cup. Like, that arc, that development that we've seen is a miracle. Like, it is a sporting miracle. Like, it is incredible how far this program has come. When you take the long view of it, like, it is amazing progress to have achieved, because you have to consider those 50, 60 years that the US was in the wilderness after the ASL collapsed. Everybody else was playing. Everybody else was developing, right? And so you've got this half-century gap in your developments, and you have to catch that up. And the fact that the US has done it as quickly as it has, and especially now we're feeling good, of course, after the Uruguay game, after the Paraguay game, we're thinking, okay, round of 16 at the World Cup, maybe the quarterfinals if a few things break right. Like, that's an amazing thing to get to consider and contemplate when you consider where this program was in the 1980s, in the 1990s for most of that decade, right? And to your other point, what's so funny about kind of the developments and that player pathway is we've actually had the blueprint for how to do this properly for a long time. In the early 1990s, U.S. Soccer had Rinus Michels on the payroll, father of the total football system, coach of the great 1974 Dutch national team, Johan Cruyff's mentor, the inventor of total football, and by extension, kind of modern soccer and the way it looks now. He was on the U.S. payroll in the early 1990s, and they basically gave him a pot of money, and they said, take your wife, take 3 months, go travel through the U.S. This is all in the book, and tell us what you come up with. And he comes back and he says, the issue that you have in this country is that you're not a country, you're a continent, right? The soccer that you play in San Diego is totally different from what you're playing in Portland. And what you're playing in New England is totally different from what you're playing in Florida. So you need to nationalize soccer, and you need to find some way of creating a more unified system that brings together the best talent and that creates incubators and that creates more of a national philosophy. And so from there, we then get Carlos Queiroz, right? The future Iran coach and the future coach of a million different teams, Portugal, who gets tasked with what would become Project 2010. It's like, okay, make a blueprint. How are we going to get better? And he says, okay, what you need is regional incubators. First, you need a national incubator that then breaks into a bunch of different regional incubators, right? You need more pipelines. That's what all these guys are saying. You need more high-level development environments that can create a wide, big, deep pool of players that you can then draw from. So we've actually known for 30 years, 35 years, what it would take. It's just taken all that time to kind of catch up and actually do it.
Okay. I know you got to go, Leander. Thank you, Leander Shaerlaekens. Look for the book, The Long Game. I'll put the link for the pre-order in the show notes. Appreciate your time. Well done. Congratulations on the publication of this book. Vince and I will be back in a second. Okay, Vince and I are back, and let's get into some weekend action real quick before we get out of here. Start with Weah's banger for Marseille, who are now 2 points back of PSG. This was the 4th goal in a 5-1 drubbing of, what do they call that coast down there? The Riviera. The Riviera, Riviera rival Nice. I think you've all probably seen the goal. I mean, he just puts his laces through it after getting laid in behind by Aubameyang. He was okay outside of the goal. Nothing too special. Bit sloppy. with his service from the right side. Set up Aubameyang with a good rolled ball in behind on the break, which Alba didn't convert. Defensively got beat once on a long diagonal.
Yep.
Up a good chance, and then he handled the next long diagonal better. All of this is going to be in clip notes, by the way. $5 a month.
That's right. $5. He did play in a cross for what I think it was Marseille's second goal. Cross got deflected out to Greenwood. Greenwood tucked it.
It was cool, it was a poor ball, I would say. But
yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, but you gotta put him in there. Sometimes you gotta get a nice result.
Right.
But yeah, the goal was dope. The first touch to bring it with them, because it's behind him a little bit.
Very.
Yeah, to bring it with them, and then it set it up perfectly on the half volley just to smash it. I mean, yeah, that's
you can't hit a ball sweeter than that.
Cannot. And yeah, that's just that's the good stuff.
That's right.
That's the good stuff, man. So, and I mean, he was started off playing fullback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think by the time he scored the goal, he was playing right wing at that point in time. So,
yeah, I mean, you're right. You put him out there, you do get some good results, and like, there's not many players can hit a ball like that. He's so elegant the way he moves around and everything. Just not his cleanest game with the ball, I wouldn't say. The setup for Alba that didn't result in a goal, I think Aubameyang may have been offsides, but that was a nice play by Tim. Tillman scored. I mean, it was a good weekend, all things considered. Tillman scored on a breakaway in a 3-1 win for Leverkusen at Wolfsburg. Gets played in behind, kind of sends the keeper the wrong way, almost like he's taking a penalty, and just passes it right past him. He's also, by some stat surfaces, credited with an assist for the first. I think it was the first goal, but it's generous to give him an assist for this. It basically, I think he's trying to get to it to shoot, and it just maybe grazes the inside of his left foot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was about to say, because I don't remember what you're talking about.
Yeah, it wasn't really an assist. I think that's a long way of saying it wasn't really an assist. He did a lot of kind of back passing in this game. I know you've brought him under the prosecutorial microscope for this kind of stuff in the past, and I you're there in my head as I'm watching this, and yeah, he's just like not even playing on the half turn, just right back to the guy who passed it to him. A lot of that in this game. He did backheel Grimaldo into a 30-yard carry from Leverkusen's defensive third, so that was nice. Then tried to bend a ball in behind after he gets it back from Grimaldo. That gets cut out. He also carried and set up his right wing to clip a ball across for an unmarked Poch, the left winger who's so dangerous for Leverkusen. He skied it, so that was real chance generation. He did get dunked on Wolfsburg's only goal with more than a half hour left, so he was then subbed off immediately, and that was that. 3-1 Leverkusen. They're doing great in the league now. Scally and Reina both figure as Gladbach gets their third straight win, 3-0 at Heidenheim. They are no longer relegation fodder. They're very much a mid-table team. Scally did mega guy down in his back right corner. People were talking about it.
Yeah,
I found the clip. It was nice. But I'm here to talk about Reina mostly. Most important thing is this is 5 straight league appearances for him, all under a half hour each one. But combine those 5 straight league appearances with his high impact US window, I feel like there's a lot of reason for optimism. I think a lot of people agree with me on that now. Again, doesn't look explosive dribbling at people, but he probably never will. I'm not expecting that to come. He does look strong and healthy. He had, even in the 18 minutes of this game, he was the fulcrum on 2 moves upfield, one of which eventually led to a goal. So he's doing good stuff out there. I just got our fingers crossed, waiting for that start.
Okay.
And then Banks and Augsburg get a 1-0 win. And you go on FOTMob, you see Banks is like gets a 7.3.
Man, just
FOTMob's in the mud, man. They don't know what they're talking about.
The less I say about that, the better, man. I mean, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, man. No, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it.
Well, it's impossible to avoid it because I look at the FOTMob score. I do always want to know what the score is. If I haven't watched the game yet, I mean, it's a piece of information. It's something.
It's
not even
something.
that.
It's definitely something. But is it is it a ultra processed food? Or is it a
It's a bag of Cheetos, baby.
Or is it some broccoli fresh from the garden? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what is it? Empty calories? You know what I'm saying? Is it something that you should consider eating? Yes, FOTMob is something that you should look at. It tastes delicious.
Mm-hmm.
It tastes delicious. All your taste buds and your neurons and your synapses are gonna be firing.
Yeah.
From the first bite, as soon as you look at that FOTMob score and you see that green next to it,
yeah,
endorphins immediately.
Dude, he played well today. Yeah,
you gotta release yourself from that. And for the accounts that basically do like a FOTMob impersonation and just literally copy and paste FOTMob and tweet it out, shame on you as well. It doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah. All that to say, he didn't have a very good game. He nothing really of note in possession from him. He whiffed trying to help a cross along to a less dangerous area, resulting in a near goal for Hamburg in the 44th minute.
Yeah, which with his head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marking mix up in the 46th. I mean, he and his right wing back were not on the same page. Got him eliminated completely, and that led to another huge chance in the 46th minute, which Hamburg wasted with a soft finish right at the keeper.
Yep.
And then he gets beaten in the air in the 84th minute by a much smaller human being.
Yep.
Header goes just wide. I mean, just wide. So
it was a strong header, man. Keeper wouldn't have had a chance.
Yeah.
That type of thing.
If you want an image, think of the Iran header against us at the 1998 World Cup. It was kind of like that, from a long ways away, a lot of power on it.
Yep. But he's playing though.
He's playing, throwing a shutout.
Yeah. Yeah. Still want to see more on the business handling front.
Yes.
Still want to see more in the possession front. Actually, I was watching when I was watching Noki, it got me to thinking about, number one, just how development isn't linear, but number two, just how like the example that I would see, in like college, would be like camp would start, right? And there would always be like a couple freshmen just out there like making plays. And you'd be like, oh shit, who is this? You know what I'm saying? Like a week into camp. But then once like everybody really got into the swing of things, and then the freshmen would like stop finding success, and then at that point it's like time to like work on your technique and like, actually try to become a football player and like quit playing off instincts or whatever. And some people would never come back from that.
Mm-hmm.
It would like scramble their brain. It's like, okay, I got to think about my hand position. I got to think about what my feet are doing before the snap of the play. Whereas, that first week they're just playing off instinct, boom, making plays. Now, and sometimes, those, like I said, those things just never came back. The good players like figured it out and applied it, but there would always be like a little hump to get over. Mm-hmm. Now, how does this apply to Noki? What I'm thinking is similar to Eunice, similar to like early Eunice, where the reason why I was kind of worried for a little bit. People know now I am not as worried, even though he's not. I mean, for the people that watch the clip notes and saw my little piece on Yunus Musa, his heat map of him sitting on the bench, his seat is very warm. His seat is very warm seat he got there. And
continued to be warm this weekend too. Yeah.
But the thing about Yunus that I saw him starting to iron out over these past like season and a half is like the Yunus stuff that we saw in CONCACAF. It wasn't playing up. Like his facing up, hezzy, get by somebody in the shimmy game and all that. It was not playing up. People were just taking the ball from that man.
Yeah.
But in the past year, like this last season with Milan, I started to see, okay, he's actually starting to be able to do that, including against, Inter. I think in the Coppa Italia, he had a Roma, etc. But anyway, so for Noki, it's like, is he going to be able to be the Noki that we see in or that we saw in U.S. youth national team camps, where he's just marauding, dribbling, passing, just looking imperious out there with the ball? We've seen some flashes, but right now, I think he's just in that adjustment period, and he's gotten a lot of minutes, and so you would hope that it would have come out by now, because I mean, every week, in the note, Belz, you got nothing of note, and it's like we're watching for it. We are watching for it intently. We would love to get a little more. So like, there's the Noki, but it's just not coming out right now. But I think it's just.
But it is more. It's more about the business handling right now for him. Handle your business defensively, and that instinct when the opportunity arises for you to do something with the ball, that instinct will arise. It's there. But take care of head the ball away when it gets crossed in. And don't lose track of the left winger in conjunction with your right wing back. Figure that stuff out. That's on you.
Which it would be, yeah. If he had all that figured out, then I mean,
who cares?
I mean, I would care, because I would hope that he would be able to do that and be just like this, Rolls Royce center back that we could build our entire defense around. But yeah, if he had the business handling, I'd be like, yeah, let's get him in camp immediately.
Right.
Until then, we continue to sit here and wait. But he continues to play, though.
Yep.
He continues to play.
Yeah, and he's got 4 more months before the March camp to continue to play. I mean, the Bundesliga has taken like 2 weeks off right around New Year's.
Yep.
So there's gonna be a lot of games between now and then.
Speaking of center backs,
and one of his center back partners got a red card. So
okay.
The guy, the left Schlotterbeck, the left center back. So he's at least got another start coming his way. I mean, and probably many more than that.
Love to see it. But like I said, speaking of center backs, I don't know what happened in the Lyon match that led to this, but Tanner Tessman was playing center back for like 40 minutes, or maybe not 40.
Is that right? I didn't watch the Lyon game.
30, 25 minutes. He was actually playing center back. Yeah. I don't. Once again, I don't know what happened, but he was playing CB, bro. He was playing CB, and he would even like get the ball and try to like carry it in the midfield a little bit and get somebody to attract to him and make a pass. And then I think somebody like turned the ball over. Either he turned the ball over or somebody else who he passed the ball to turned the ball over. And he was responsible for getting back. So he's just like, you see him busting it. And he actually does like make the play on the Auxerre. I mean, how do you say Angers and Auxerre different? They both sound like the same thing when you say it in French.
I mean, it's Auxerre, and is Angers, isn't it Angers? Auxerre
and Auxerre. Okay, understood. Well, we're talking about Auxerre. But yeah, he was able to get back and make the play on the attacker. But like you could see it clear as day. That man was playing center back. So I don't know what led to the move. I haven't went back and looked at the like substitution patterns or what was going on there. But yep, he was doing it.
Okay.
And Also, first of all, he had I took great offense to what L'Equipe said about the Tan Man.
Yeah, I did too. The offense that I'm taking has only grown too over time.
2 weeks ago or whatever. But hey, in that first half, he was flirting with a Cardoso. He was flirting with they didn't happen like that deep but they were bad passes in his own half. He wasn't passing it back directly to a person who is like in on goal or type of thing. But he had a couple bad turnovers.
You talking about in the Auxerre game?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He had a couple bad turnovers that he needs to cut out there. Oh, and also just cheekily, I do want to say my favorite moment from this window was that Tanner Tessman pass to Christian Roldan in the box that led up to the Gio goal. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Bro, was that not extremely nice, bro?
It was nice. It was, yeah. Yeah.
Like 4 dudes around him and it just boop, sent that thing out to Christian.
Clever little pass. I agree. Yeah, I mean Tanner's going to be back in March, and he's probably going to play in the World Cup. And I'm happy about it, Let's see. Speaking of it not playing up, I feel like we should mention Kevin Sullivan did come on for the last 14, 15 minutes of the Philly Union's loss at home to NYCFC.
Yep.
And he did have a good moment at the beginning, like right when he came on, helped set up a chance, shot got blocked. But then from then on, he was like putting the bit between his teeth, going at people just like he was playing the Morocco U17s, and just the people just weren't like impressed, they weren't even moving. He couldn't get him to move.
Oh, okay.
He tried to meg somebody and didn't meg him. He played a couple of like pretty wasteful passes into
this
the
damn
low
kid
block.
out of here.
Yeah, right. So freshly turned 16. It's cool that he got the nod in a must-win 15-minute period there from Bradley Carnell, who hasn't given him anywhere close to the David Goss promised 1,000 minutes this season. But we just got to wait for next year for Kevin to fully come good.
Okay.
And then Matt Freese had a really nice save at the end of that game. I think he had a couple of nice saves in the game, but one in particular in the 80th, somewhere around the 85th minute, a shot that went over to his left, and he got his right hand up over to save it. No Musa, as you mentioned, did not play for Atalanta. Jedi is still hurt, as Leander sort of referenced, and then no Balogun because he's on red card suspension. And I think that covers it for the week. Welcome back. Good to have you. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you.